Hey, Lee Robinson here from American Sentinel K9. We're going to try this video again. I don't typically do knife reviews. This was supposed to be an unboxing, but we forgot to turn our phone on, which I just recorded with my phone. I forgot to turn it on airplane mode, and because of that I had a call come in and cut off my video. So we're going to try this video again. I've only had this knife for a little over an hour, and we just opened it up and have started looking at it. Now, with that said, okay, it's not an unboxing, but my point for mentioning that is I have not yet field tested this blade yet. So I do need to field test it and see how it works in the field. So this is a tabletop review on my first impressions of the Tops Wild Pig Hunter. And in this review, I'm going to explain my first impressions, and I'm also going to explain why I chose this blade for hog hunting. Now, it came with a leather sheath. It's a nice leather sheath. I do wish it was Kydex because I'm not your traditional hunter in some regards. I'm kind of modernized, and it was time for me to get a knife that was specifically designed for hog hunting. In the past, when I've gone hunting and I've carried a knife, I've just carried like my K-bar or something like that, or maybe even like a bayonet style knife that would certainly do the task very well. But I wanted to go ahead and branch out and get something that was specifically designed for hog hunting. And with that said, we'll see that this knife is very well designed. Now, why now instead of earlier? Well, I do retire from teaching in 2 years, and I also have another interest, which is my son. My son is 14 years old now. He's certainly of age to start going on some of these adventures, and for him to enjoy it as much as possible, it would be beneficial to have tools that are specifically designed for that task. Now, in videos, sometimes it's kind of hard to see how big an item is. You know, how long is that blade? So if I put my hand here, you can see that the blade is about 2 hands. But it doesn't look like that in the video. When I look here, it looks like the grip is a pretty good length. But yet when I put my grip here, there's not a whole lot of excess grip. You know, it really fits the hand nice, and now the blade looks longer for some reason. So it's always nice to get a good perspective. Instead of, you can make this blade look like it's 3 feet long depending on how you hold it. And you can also make it look really short depending on how you hold it. Here it looks like it's the same length as the handle. Here it looks like it's really long like a sword. So, it's nice to get multiple views of a blade, and that was one of the things that was kind of hard for me to see in the product videos that I saw online. But from the end of the edge to the tip, it's 7 5/8. And to the handle, if I slide the handle up to the ruler, it's a full 8 inches long. So this is plenty long to kill a very large hog in excess of 300 pounds. Now, personally, when it gets to be something that big, I will probably use a firearm. I do tend to carry a firearm with me when I go. Now, some people would consider that to be taboo, but they can do their way and I'll do my way. So, I will be getting another knife here in a few days, which we will review that as well. Again, this is not to be intended to be a knife review channel. This is a review of a knife that fits my interests, and that is hog hunting. Why will I get another blade? I want one a little smaller for my son. He's only 14 years old. He just turned 14 not long ago, and he weighs a little bit less than 100 pounds. So he's not going to have the strength yet of a full-grown man. As a result of that, it's going to be hard for him to use a blade such as this blade, which is designed for penetration. He's going to have a hard time stabbing this all the way up to the handle. So we got him one that's a little over 6 inches. Actually, the blade is 6 inches, and the cutting length all the way to the handle is 6.5. And that's probably all he'll be able to handle at his size and age. And it's also a little bit narrower this way. It's only 1 inch. This is 1 3/8 inches, or 1 5/16 inches. I think it says 1 3/8 inches on the stat sheet, but you can check that. This blade is really strong. It's a 1/4 inch thick with a full tang that goes all the way through the handle. His also has a full tang, but instead of being a 1/4 inch thick, I think his is 3/16. Well, I'll double check that in his review. He has a nice hand guard. On the back of my shirt, you'll notice my shirt is my old Keep It Simple archery business. See, I've had 3 primary interests: genetics biology, dogs with protection training, and then also hunting. I used to own a business called Keep It Simple Archery, and it was really more of a hobby. I didn't really intend for it to become a full-time business, but it grew, and I had to make the choice to shut it down because it got to be too busy and I couldn't handle it properly while I was teaching and doing dogs. And so the hunting aspect of my life has been something that's kind of fit into my schedule when I have time. So we went ahead and shut that down. But my point for mentioning that is one of the gentlemen that I got to know in the archery business was a man named Gary Centman, and he's on the back of this shirt. And I'll tell you why I mention him in just a minute. So there you can see my friend Gary Centman, who's about 70 something years old now, I believe. And that man, I mention him because he lived in the woods in Alaska for 10 years with no electricity. He built 2 log cabins by hand, and he hunted with primitive weapons extensively. And so there's very few people, in my opinion, that really have the knowledge and skill sets that he has. He was a trapper, hunter, traditional bowman, etc. And when he was hunting, he had a few encounters that he learned quite a bit from, that are events that you don't have to repeat over and over again to get quite an impression of. And one of the things, he didn't just live in Alaska. Let me back up. He also lived in Oregon, and he also lived in Montana. And he's told me several stories, and so I may not have all the details 100% right, because after a while of all the stories, sometimes you get a fact here and a fact there and kind of mix them up, and you get an impression of a story that maybe it wasn't all the same day, but over the time he's learned different things. And a couple of the stories that he told me, one time he told me about stabbing an animal with a blade to kind of test the blade. And when in testing the blade, he noticed that if the blade wasn't designed for penetration, it was very difficult in some cases to get much more than half penetration. But when the blade was designed properly, you could take it all the way to the handle. So that's why this long tapered spear point is kind of important. Okay, you'll notice even on the back side of this edge, a lot of metal has been removed to narrow this up. But we still have that core, just like on a spear, where you have that full 1/4 inch thickness all the way down until you get to about right here. Then that core beam starts to taper off to the point and narrow up. So we've got a lot of torsional resistance here on this blade, which I like. This is a high carbon steel. It's not a stainless steel. Carbon steel tends to take an edge a little bit better than your stainless steels, but stainless steels tend to hold that edge a little longer. And the way Tops Knives deals with that is they use a special heat treatment. They hand temper all these blades, and you can see right here, there's a little line about 3/8 of an inch that runs down above the edge. It's kind of hard to see, but you can see that very faint line through that blade taper there. You can faintly see that tempering difference where they heat treat the edge. The edge of this blade is a 58 Rockwell hardness, while the back beam of this blade is 56, and that allows it to have some resistance when there's torsional, like hinging type of movements, in case that blade wants to bend or fold. So when I stab something, if I'm not 100% perpendicular as I come down on it, you know, I got it tilted a little bit. There's going to be some resistance as it goes into that beam or into that item. So he noticed that, you know, it's very important that the blade be shaped for penetration, but you also notice when you're getting that thrust, you also want a good guard. He told me a story about when the blade got bloody one time, his hand slipped over and he cut his finger a little bit. So you want to avoid that. That's why that guard is very important. So anyway, what we have is a full 1/4 inch thick blade that goes all the way, that goes all the way through the handle, and it's covered with linen marcata. Now, a lot of people make a big deal about the red outlines and such, and they think that looks beautiful. Personally, I don't really care. I like a earth tone knife, something that doesn't stand out. And if I did want something to stand out, I'd probably go with orange, something you could find, which would stand out, but it'd be easy to find if you ever drop it. I mentioned that, and a lot of people love these lanyards for when you drop your knife. Personally, when it comes to a knife this size, using a lanyard to hold on to a knife for like chopping or something when you're way out here, okay, that makes a little sense to me. But holding on to a knife so you are holding onto it with a lanyard so you don't drop it. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me. If you, I mean, the last thing I want is this big heavy knife swinging from my arm next to my leg. Now the only exception to that might be if I'm hog hunting in water. Water would probably slow the pendulum motion downward, be a little safer, and probably not cut me. But I'm not going to really use that lanyard for security of dropping my knife. I just believe in having a good grip, don't let go of it, and having the guard to prevent you from slipping up if it's wet. That's my philosophy. If you want to learn more about knives, go watch somebody else's channel. I'm not a tactical knife expert. I believe in firearms and situational awareness for self-defense. So anyway, enough about that. Back to the knife. We have, like I said, a tempered blade. It's some sort of acid like wash treatment that they put on this carbon steel to prevent it from rusting. And that's nice because carbon steel will rust, and you know a hog hunting knife is going to be covered in blood and water, and you're going to have to clean it, and it may not get clean until you get home. So, and then you can't just leave it out to dry if you're in the river. You got to put it up and carry it home in the sheath. The sheath does not have a drain hole. I will add a drain hole to my sheath. If I get water in there, I don't want it to stay wet. Okay, so it is leather, and it does come with a whistle. I wish it was Kydex. I'm not your traditional hunter. I hunt with an AR-15, so I believe in, I would like a Kydex, but this is certainly sufficient. Anyway, we've got the grip that's covered in Mercata. It feels good in the hand. My first impressions of this knife is it's going to be excellent hog hunting knife. So anyway, Lee Robinson from American Sentinel K9. This is the Tops Knife Wild Pig Hunter. I don't know what else to say about it, except for my first impression is I'm pleased. It comes out of the box with a nice edge. Yeah, but you know, that doesn't mean a whole lot to me. A knife should be shaving sharp right out of the box.